In this video, I'm going to be comparing two different franchises from Sony Pictures Animation, the Hotel Transylvania films to the Open Season films. You got four movies in each franchise. I've seen all of them at this point. When it comes to the highest score for each franchise, the third Hotel Transylvania movie has the highest score of 62%. In the case of Open Season. Ooh, none of these movies are fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So the highest score is only a 49% for the first Open Season movie. Hotel Transylvania wins here. Then when you look at lowest score with Hotel Transylvania, that first movie only has a 44%. But in the case of Open Season, the third movie only has a 30%. And then when you look at average score, Hotel Transylvania has an average of 52, while Open Season has an average of 37. So Hotel Transylvania wins again. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, you got gap of 18 in the case of Hotel Transylvania, whereas you have a gap of 19 in the case of Open Season. So by literally only 1%, the gap's lower in the case of Hotel Transylvania, so it wins this round, meaning it's going to win no matter what, because it's won every round so far. And in this case, I would definitely, easily say that I prefer Hotel Transylvania, not because I have big issues with Open Season, but because when I compare them, it's obvious to me that Hotel Transylvania is just more interesting because I haven't seen another franchise that's exactly the same as Hotel Transylvania. Obviously, the actual monsters in these movies are ones we've seen before elsewhere. I mean, you have Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, Frankenstein. But I like the idea that Count Dracula has created this hotel called Hotel Transylvania that's a refuge for all these monsters, a place where they can live in safety without having to worry about being hunted down or persecuted by humans. And we also learned that there was something tragic that happened to Count Dracula in his past, which has caused him to be really afraid of humans. So for that reason, he's trying to keep his daughter Mavis around the hotel. He doesn't want her going out. You get where the insecurity is coming from, but you also get that Mavis is now a teenager, so she doesn't like being cooped up. She wants to explore the outside world. Then the first movie, this boy named Jonathan accidentally stumbles across the hotel. Count Dracula's not happy about that because this is supposed to be a hotel where there aren't any humans. So at first he's trying to keep the fact that Jonathan is a human secret, but then naturally the truth comes out. Mavis is really unhappy because her father actually created this fake town and had these monsters pretend to be humans to make the humans look really bad because he wanted Mavis to stay with him at the hotel. He didn't want her going out. Obviously, when Mavis learns what her father did, she's very unhappy with him, as you'd expect. But then Count Dracula grows, so by the end of the first film, he's okay with Mavis getting together with this human boy Jonathan. Then the second movie, we learn that Mavis and Jonathan now have a kid, meaning Count Dracula's a grandfather. There's conflict because Count Dracula, Mavis, and Jonathan are trying to decide whether the grandchild, the Mavis and Jonathan's boy, should embrace his human side or his monster side. Count Dracula really wants his grandchild to be a vampire. Mavis and Jonathan don't really agree with him. They end up going on this trip, and so the baby is left with Count Dracula and these other monsters. And then in the third movie, you have the family going on a vacation, and also Count Dracula actually ends up getting together with this lady after he had raised Mavis by himself, after he lost his wife a long time ago, as we learned in the first movie. This lady that Count Dracula is attracted to at first is just trying to kill him, but then she realizes that, oh, these monsters are not actually bad. They're not just these terrible creatures I want to hunt down and kill. No, I actually want to be friends with them. Then the fourth movie, Count Dracula is trying to decide whether he wants to hand the key to the hotel over to Mavis and Jonathan. There's insecurity on his part because he really cares deeply about the hotel. He wants it to be run well. So there's conflict that comes about as a result of that. By the end of the movie, Count Dracula fully makes it clear to Jonathan, you are part of the family. I like you. I want us to have a good relationship. It's pretty heartwarming. When I look at the open season movies, I would say that they feel a bit familiar. I mean, when you look at the first film, it definitely reminds me of Rio from Blue Sky Studios. Because in the case of open season, you have this bear that was raised by a human, but then he meets this deer that leads him out into the wild. Also, there's circumstances that happened which led to the humans deciding this bear needs to go out into the wild, not live with a stranger anymore. The bear ends up realizing he wants to actually stay out in the wild and not go back to live with this ranger that raised him. That's the same kind of thing that happens in Rio, where you have this bird that was raised by a human, but then goes out into the wild, meets this other animal, then ends up ultimately staying out in the wild. Also, when you get to the third movie, you have a circus being introduced, their main character goes to. It's similar for that reason to Madagascar Free, Europe's Most Wanted. Also, right away in the first open season movie, we're introduced to this hunter that really wants to hunt down animals. You have hunters in Rio 2 as well. So I wouldn't say that I dislike the open season movies. It's more like, okay, yeah, they're perfectly fine, enjoyable enough, entertaining enough, without being fantastic. They're not top tier animated films. They're not at all at the same level as Pixar films like Toy Story, Finding Nemo. They're not at the same level as top tier DreamWorks films like Wild Robot, first 3 Kung Fu Panda movies, first 2 How to Train Your Dragon movies. So I definitely would say in this case, easily I prefer Hotel Transylvania because it's just more memorable, more interesting, more distinct, does something more different, whereas open season does feel more familiar. They'll wrap things up for now.